عام 39 يعني عقد أول مؤتمر للسلام في العالم. هذا المؤتمر كان يعني يتبنى القضية الفلسطينية. وقتها لم يكن لليهود الذين يعيشون في فلسطين، وهم كانوا أعداد بسيطة من يهود عرب كانوا يعيشوا في فلسطين، إلا مطالب بسيطة، وهو أن يكون لهم تمثيل في البرلمان للدولة الفلسطينية القادمة. رفضت هذه الفكرة، ثم بعد أقل من 10 سنوات أعلن عن التقسيم. أيضا ذلك التقسيم كان على حدود بسيطة لدولة إسرائيلية صغيرة، ورفض هذا التقسيم للأسف من الدول العظمى العربية في ذلك الوقت، كانت العراق وسوريا ومصر، وطلبوا من السكان الأصليين الهجرة لأنهم سيقومون بحرب سحق اليهود والإسرائيليين في دولتهم المنشأة
ورميهم في البحر.
وكان موقف الملك عبد العزيز رحمه الله رافضا. كان الملك عبد العزيز يقول لهم لا تنزعوا الناس من بلادهم، إلا أنهم رفضوه وطلبوا من السكان الفلسطينيين الهجرة، وحصلت الهجرة التي بسببها اليوم يوجد هناك نازحون في العالم العربي.
Who is helping the Christians now in Pakistan? Who is helping the Christians now in Nigeria? Nobody is helping nobody. Nobody cares. If Christian countries cannot help Christian people, why would I expect a non-Jewish state to help Jewish people?
In Palestine, we are persuaded that the ruinous reign of murder, ambush, arson, and poisonous incitement must be dealt with more vigorously by the British government.
If you try to hide something, if you try to ignore a certain problem, it doesn't go away.
Roosevelt verlangt endlich die Bereitwilligkeit, ihm die Zusicherung zu geben, dass die deutschen Streitkräfte das Staatsgebiet folgender unabhängiger Nationen nicht angreifen und dann Finnland, Lettland, Litauen, Estland, Norwegen, Schweden, Dänemark, Niederlande, Belgien, Großbritannien, Irland, Frankreich, Portugal, Spanien, Schweiz, Liechtenstein, Luxemburg, Polen, Ungarn, Rumänien, Jugoslawien, Russland, Bulgarien, Türkei, Irak, Arabien, Syrien, Palästina.
The Nazis did offer the world to just take the Jews from Germany because they are not interested in having the Jews, but they weren't interested in killing them until later.
A frightened Britain under Neville Chamberlain restricted Jewish immigration to Israel in exchange for Arab support and Arab oil. Jews from Arab countries could no longer escape to Israel. The borders were sealed. In Iraq, the Arabs had no more need for subtleties. A pro-Nazi government was formed. Nazi swastikas were seen all over the streets, hinting that the time had come to eliminate the Jews. In June 1941, the Jewish quarter of Baghdad was the scene of a massacre. Hundreds of Jews were killed, thousands injured.
I want to give a little bit of credit to the Brits because the Brits did stop a lot of butchering when they conquered the Middle East. And I think they kind of understood that when they give areas to leaders in the Middle East, part of it is to try to give it to those leaders who would suppress some tendencies inside the Arab world. The Brits, just like they protected the Jews in Israel, they protected the Assyrians in Iraq, for example, and there were also the Copts in Egypt.
The Jewish people at once began to celebrate the United Nations decision. 2 days later, this was the typical scene. Arabs advancing on the center of Jerusalem at the beginning of a 3-day strike and an orgy of wrecking, looting and bloodshed.
2 remembrance days held annually with a week to separate, so we'll have no doubt what's the cost with a Jewish state and what's the cost without.
The long Jewish exile had ended, but at 5 o'clock in the morning, Tel Aviv was bombed by Egyptian aircraft. Israel's defenders had no illusions about the perils that they would face.
Prior to Israel's independence war, this is what the Arab leader Abd Rahman Azam had declared. This will be a war of extermination and mountainous massacre, which will be spoken of like the Tartar massacre or the Crusader wars.
Israel, less than 1 day old, was being attacked not by untrained volunteers, but by the armies of 6 sovereign Arab states, well-trained and lavishly equipped with British and French weaponry. The combined Arab armies had 35,000 men with modern armor and artillery.
The Jewish army, men, women, and high school students who face the Arab onslaught are mainly civilians, poorly equipped, barely trained, using faith and determination against overwhelming odds.
Arabs looted the Jewish quarter, destroying dozens of synagogues in their wild rampage. Rifles and light machine guns began to arrive from Czechoslovakia. April was Ben-Gurion's finest hour. He ordered the Haganah to to abandon mere defense and to smash through to beleaguered Jerusalem.
From Israel's declaration of independence, we appeal, in the very midst of an onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions. We extend our hand to all neighboring states and their people in offer of peace and good neighborliness, and appeal to them to establish bonds of cooperation and mutual help with the sovereign Jewish people settled in its own land. The State of Israel is prepared to do its share in a common effort for advancement of the entire Middle East.
Most of Haifa's 70,000 Arabs, alarmed by the intensification of hostilities, fled to neighboring Lebanon.
Admit I was dead wrong. I said that Moshe Carmel, the mayor of Haifa, asked the Arabs of Haifa to stay and not flee, and Lonobox was right to correct me here. It was not Moshe Carmel. Shabtai Levi was the mayor. He's the one that asked the local Arabs to stay.
We gathered in Jerusalem at the Hebron gate. We checked who was missing and who had survived. Then the Palestinian leaders arrived, including Dr. Khalidi.
دكتور حسين فخر فاندي فقلت له ايه رأيك كيف نغطي هالموضوع.
I asked Dr. Khalidi how we should cover the story.
أنا رأيي إنه نعطيه.
He said, we must make the most of this. So he wrote a press release stating that at Deir Yassin, children were murdered, pregnant women were raped, all sorts of atrocities.
والاعتداء على الأطفال وكل هالأشياء.
Arab radio stations passed on the false reports, ignoring the protests of the witnesses.
We said there was no rape. He said we have to say this so the Arab armies will come to liberate Palestine from the Jews.
This was our biggest mistake. We did not realize how our people would react. As soon as they heard that women have been raped at Deir Yassin, Palestinians fled in terror. They ran away from all our villages.
During the summer of 1948, the United Nations mediator, Count Folke Bernadotte of Sweden, had been formulating a design for what he called a permanent settlement. In his first plan, he proposed to limit Jewish immigration, to award Jerusalem and the Negev to the Arab state, and to make Haifa a free port. It was like a surgeon who runs away with his patient's vital organs under the pretense of curing him.